What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you on a Thursday, September 26th, 2024. Glad to have you along. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Got some breaking news to get into this morning, and joining me to break all that down is ScoopDuck owner and publisher, Justin Hopkins. How we doing, Justin?
Man, it's been a while, and it's funny because we always sit here and talk about it. It's nice when we have stuff to talk about, and we definitely do today. It's a hell of a start to Thirsty Thursday.
It sure is. It sure is. Thursday gets off to a great start. Ducks starting the Thursday with a bang as 2025 Bishop Gorman offensive lineman Doug Utu has flipped his commitment from the Tennessee Volunteers to the Oregon Ducks in a massive recruiting win for Alik Terry and Oregon. Justin, it felt like Oregon really needed a commitment, not necessarily specifically just at offensive line, but it does feel like it's been a while since we've done one of these, gotten to break down a new member of the flock, a new commitment for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. But man, you really couldn't ask for a better storyline. Ducks hit on a major position of need at offensive line, and you steal one from one of the hottest recruiting schools in the country in Tennessee. Let's get into it.
Yeah, this is just what the doctor ordered, right? And I mean, this is it's a commitment, probably at the biggest position of need for Oregon right now, currently left on the board. I mean, they still need to find a tight end and a linebacker, but I think offensive line, most would agree, was probably the biggest need right now today, at least at the prep level. You were able to steal one from Tennessee, like you noted there, which then prompted you to jump ahead of Tennessee in the recruiting rankings. I understand that's somewhat arbitrary, but it's still also a good thing. And then, lastly, that puts Oregon as the school with the highest rating per commit, with Utu committed now. So, what that means is they don't have as many commits as some other schools, but their star rating is better than everyone else in the country, meaning that the quality of their commits is as good as it gets. So, this one checked off a lot of boxes all at once. That's for sure.
A little bit of revenge, you could maybe say, for the Ducks here, as obviously Tennessee flipped away 2025 tight end Deshaun Brame from the Ducks earlier on this year. And it's exactly what the doctor ordered. And it generates some much needed momentum as we kind of enter the start of another crucial recruiting window. And I don't know if it's too early to say it's flip season, but we did just see a flip unfold here with Utu choosing the Ducks. But wanted to give you guys just a little bit more background on Utu. He's listed on 3 at 6'4", 315 pounds. On 3 has him as a 4-star recruit, number 280 player nationally, number 22 interior offensive lineman, and the number 2 prospect in the state of Nevada. Justin, it's kind of interesting. This is a guy who honestly is rated differently at a lot of different spots, right? On 3 has him as 280 nationally, 247 has him as 101, ESPN has him as 13, and then Rivals has him the highest of anybody at number 12 nationally. So that all balances out to be number 57 nationally in the On 3 industry ranking. So what do you kind of make of that, and just, I guess, some of the juice that comes with getting a guy of his caliber?
Yeah, I think that 50, 60 range is, 50 to 75 range is probably fair. And, I know folks, like, I enjoy rankings. I understand rankings. I realize it's an inexact science. What I like about rankings most, I don't get too hung up in, oh, they got this guy at 12 and this other, service has him at 19, or whatever. I like when you take the average and say, all right, yeah, this kid's probably around 50 to 75. He's clearly one of the best offensive linemen out west. So that to me is something that sticks out. Obviously, he's at Bishop Gorman, which is an elite program in terms of producing players. They do a really good job of producing linemen on both sides of the ball year in and year out. Utu obviously being one of their very best there right now. So, I mean, taking all those things into consideration, this is an easy, bona fide top 100 player. I don't know that I see a 5-star there yet. 5 stars to me are just absolute can't miss type guys. And I don't know that Utu is quite in that category yet. But still, this is a top 100, top 50 guy. That's a big get. I like where that's at. I do think if we're being critical, I think On3 themselves has him ranked a little bit out of whack there. So maybe they can get a little bit of a new eye on him or a reevaluation, because obviously if you look at the others, one of those is not like the others, right? So, why is that? So maybe we can get the guys at On3 to reevaluate, but and I'm not picking on them. Just again, it's an outlier. So if that's the case, you look at his ranking, that would go up, because that's the one that's really dragging him down into the 50s right now.
Well, let's get into a little bit more here, Justin, about just how badly Oregon needed this commitment. Starting off on Thursday morning, when I woke up, the Ducks had Dimitri Manning, Zaire Addison, and Alai Kalaniuvalu, who was also at Bishop Gorman, in their 2025 offensive line class. But there's a number of guys that we can list off here that Oregon was involved in, but ultimately wasn't able to land in the 2025 class. You could talk about, oh my God, I'm having complete brain fart. This is insane.
Jackson Lloyd being one of them, Josh Petty, Michael Fasusi.
How about the guy in Georgia? What was his name? He committed to Georgia.
Juan Gaston went to Georgia.
Gaston, thank you.
Aaron Dunn went to Utah. Yeah, just kind of miss after miss. And I think Aaron Dunn was probably the one that stung the most, because you don't typically lose one to Utah if you're Oregon, but you kind of understand he's a Utah kid. But yeah, I mean, it's been a string of misses, to your point.
Yeah, I don't know if that ever happens to you, Justin, but like, unbelievable brain fart right there for how much I'm always reading and talking and reporting on this. But that's why you're here.
Wait till you get to your 40s, buddy. Just wait.
Oh no, I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, it's just, it gives Alik Terry a lot of momentum that I don't think he necessarily felt like he needed, but at least on the surface, I think it kind of gives Oregon fans a sigh of relief, because you know how people are on our boards. It's either we're so back, or the whole sky is falling. We've got it all over there at ScoopDuck from what people have to say. So I think you and I were kind of the opinion that, okay, lots of misses that you alluded to there, right? There's some cause for concern there, a little bit of skepticism, but it wasn't like, oh my God, like this class is a complete failure. They're not going to be able to get any quality offensive linemen. I think that you kind of had your eye on Utu for a long time, because if you're looking for flips, Justin, you start out west for sure, because you have distance on your side there. And then for Utu, he was committed to Tennessee. So now he has to fly from Vegas to Eugene instead of Vegas to Nashville, which I think is the closest one to Knoxville. But yeah, what do you kind of make of that, about how this can kind of just simmer things down a little bit and get things rolling in the right direction?
Yeah, it's like I said to start, it's what the doctor ordered, right? And you and I typically are pretty level-headed about these things, but you look at the recruiting class prior to you two joining. Yes, you're excited about Zaire Addison, no question, right? That's a great get for Oregon. You look at Dimitri Manning, maybe not quite a finished product, okay, and that's okay. He's a big body. He's a guy out west. You're going to bring him in, and I don't think that anybody's saying that's a guy that's ready-made day one. That's probably not the case. Again, that's okay when you're talking about offensive line. It's a very developmental position. And in terms of Alai, I'm not even going to butcher his last name. He's going to go on a mission, right? So he's not a guy that helps you, in this coming year. It's not determined quite yet if he's going on a 1 or 2 year mission. So you don't really know what you have there. So if you take that one off the board, you got Dimitri Manning and you got Zaire Addison, which really just is not enough. It wasn't enough, okay? And combined with, what spurns that is the fact that we've seen some offensive line woes with the team currently, and knowing that some of those guys that they've recruited in the past 2 recruiting classes aren't quite ready yet, aren't up to the standard, whatever you want to call it. And so, if that's the case, like, I don't ever want to see Oregon in a position where they're bringing in 5 offensive linemen through the transfer portal in a year. That's not a good sign. That's not what you want. I know Oregon could do it, but that's not a recipe for success. To me, the offensive line position and the transfer portal, it should be a supplement only. Like you might need a dude or possibly two, or you need a guy that is more likely, ready to be a starter, and maybe a guy like for depth, like ready-made depth. I get all that, and I don't mind seeing a guy or two. But if you're bringing in 5 or 6 guys on the transfer portal at the offensive line position, it's going to be difficult in that upcoming season to build the chemistry. And secondly, it means you don't have anything behind them that you're developing. Again, a very developmental position. So I think you and I have been on the same page that we expect Oregon to use the transfer portal for offensive line this year, no matter what. At least one, possibly two, who knows? But they're going to, no matter what happens moving forward. Utu definitely makes that better in like, okay, here's a guy that's probably a little bit closer to being ready to contribute out the gate versus being a total developmental guy. So if they can get one more guy closer to Utu's level, like maybe being a little bit more ready-made, I'll feel pretty good about this offensive line class. If they can get one more guy, like, similar to Utu, and maybe, we'll talk about Zach Staskowski, again, maybe a little bit more of a developmental guy, but still doesn't hurt to bring those guys in at this position, then I'll feel really good about that offensive line group.
And an important note for clarity here, Justin, for the folks that are listening or watching us here on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel, is that Oregon views Utu as an offensive tackle. Even though his profile lists him as an interior guy, they do view him as an offensive tackle, which I believe is the same case with Zaire Addison. And that's important because I think you're probably expecting to lose for sure a Johnny Cornelius, possibly Josh Connerly Jr. at the end of the 2024 season. And we've seen that, oddly enough, the tackle spot was where our concerns were with the depth for the Ducks this year. And their depth is actually still being tested along the interior. So that said, if you can get a guy like Utu, who's potentially going to be ready to go, probably not right out of the gate, but maybe sooner rather than later, we can probably say, I think you feel a bit more comfortable with where things are at. So you kind of alluded to the next point here, Justin, was just what's next for Oregon at offensive line recruiting, because they are still involved with Staskowski, who is committed to Washington, was formerly committed to Minnesota. Do you kind of view this situation as, hey, if you can get Staskowski, I'm still kind of butchering that, Staskowski, that you feel like you're pretty solid along the O-line in 25?
You and I rattled off 4 or 5 names of not all were elite, but a little bit closer to Utu's level. I think you push for one more guy at that level, whether, Petty's wavering on his Georgia Tech commitment, whether, Fasusi's wavering on his Oklahoma commitment, you got a chance there. And you just stay patient. Like there was no reason. I mean, here's the thing. There was no reason for Oregon to, push wildly for Utu back in July, right? Just kind of hung out there and did your thing and kept communication. And here we are about to hit October, and you're able to obviously make the move now. You can do that again, right? You can continue talking to some of those guys. And I think that's what you do. We're going to see some chaos in recruiting. There's coaches that already have a warm seat. There's coaches that maybe have more of a hot seat. And you look at it a couple ways here. Florida, obviously Billy Napier's got a hot seat. You look at Baylor, you look at Oklahoma, you just look at names that are out there right now, Auburn. Okay. They all have, not only do they have starting offensive line on their team, they probably have some highly rated guys sitting there that will have multiple years left. So I just think if you're Oregon, you stay patient. You wait to see, what names you hear about. You wait to see if any of the movement happens at the prep level, and you're ready to pounce. I mean, that's the name of the game now. You're just ready to pounce. I know nobody wants to be reliant on flips or transfer portal or whatever, but I would say there's a difference between bringing in a transfer portal offensive lineman that has multiple years left, maybe like similar to a Peyton Bowen situation or something like Peyton Woodyard, situation, versus somebody who is, okay, I'm a 5th-year guy or a 4th-year guy. I'm looking to come in and start up my NFL profile and be done. There's 2 different, kind of transfer portal guys there. So again, no need to panic for me. Let's see what happens. I think you chip away at Aaron Dunn and see if that's a guy that might be loosening on his commitment a little bit with Utah. You never know.
Yeah, Aaron Dunn is one that obviously makes sense to stay involved with, given Oregon's connections in Utah and how they have prioritized that state for a number of years. But the other guy that I want to talk a little bit more about, Justin, is Michael Fasusi, because folks might have forgotten that he was slated to take his official visit to Oregon, and it didn't end up happening. And I think that you had reported or had said on the boards that was kind of a strategic play by the Ducks to kind of try to, hey, reschedule that one. Let's just kind of get you out here for a game, maybe try to do it in season. And it's important to note, I don't really know what Oklahoma's outlook is right now with some of the shakeup that they've had at quarterback after benching Jackson Arnold. I don't think he's starting this week either for the Sooners. So they're going into that first year of SEC play, much like Oregon's going in their first year of Big Ten play. But I don't know if the confidence is as strong necessarily in Norman as it is in Eugene for how they're both going to do in their first years in these new conferences. Obviously, the SEC is stronger than the Big Ten. We know that. But I think that Fasusi is an interesting one to keep tabs on because Oregon still does have that OV kind of sitting in their back pocket. So I wouldn't be surprised, not necessarily saying if he joins at some point, but we're sitting here in September talking about him, and he's certainly going to be a name to watch, I think, as the early signing period gets closer.
Yeah, Oklahoma is interesting to me because I don't think Venables gets fired after this year unless he loses every game left on the schedule. Unlikely, right? But there's certainly some cracks in the foundation there, and I think his situation is similar to what Marcus Freeman's situation was a year ago at Notre Dame. You kind of start looking like, is this the guy? Are we for sure this is the guy? And it becomes a situation where every win or loss really probably becomes magnified. And that trickles out to your team. That trickles out to your recruiting class. I think this quarterback situation, which is obviously being highly talked about at Oklahoma, this is a bad look for Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens there, Fasusi. Anyways, yeah, I threw out those names. It wasn't just like I grabbed all the 5 stars on the list and said, here's the 5 stars. Oregon's going to recruit them all. That's not really fair, but let's go back and look at the ones that they did have a relationship back in the spring and summer. And like I said, there's Jackson Lloyd, there's Josh Petty, Michael Fasusi, Aaron Dunn, Juan Gaston. I think those are, and then of course you could look at Doug Utu's teammate, also at Bishop Gorman, SJ Alo Fatuli.
Nice.
He's committed to Miami, so there's another one, 4-star guy, Bishop Gorman, guy out west again. So just keep your options open if you're Oregon. I think offensive line recruiting is going to be okay. And I would just say this: I don't think Doug Utu fixed everything, but it certainly took us a lot of people from up here to like, okay, I'll take a breath now and kind of see how this plays out.
I think everyone else needs to take a breath too. And then after you're done taking that breath, head on over to Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors here on the pod. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito Grill at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try out their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Max Torres, Justin Hopkins here from ScoopDuck on 3, breaking down the latest commitment as 2025 offensive lineman Doug Utu has flipped his commitment from the Tennessee Volunteers to the Oregon Ducks. Talked about the pledge, talked about a little bit about what's next. Maybe let's give a little time to the other names to kind of track here in the world of Oregon recruiting, Justin, because it seems like things are heating up a little bit. Certainly in the 2025 class, Oregon's going to be able to get some recruits out to town next weekend for the Michigan State game. But one big name in 2025 that I've been kind of telling people to keep an eye on is Noah McHale, 2025 linebacker, who is currently a verbal commit to Texas A&M. I was able to interview him earlier on this week, and you can read the full interview with all of his quotes over on ScoopDuck.com. So if you guys haven't checked out ScoopDuck.com, you definitely need to, because you're not going to find better recruiting coverage anywhere else. Justin, Oregon's still very much alive here. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah. Like we just talked about with some of the offensive line guys, just keep chopping wood, right? That's the name of the game. I mean, you're not gonna cut through the tree in one slice, right? You're gonna keep chopping wood and hacking away at it. Right now, I would say that the probability of a flip is relatively low, right? I don't think that anything's imminent. I don't think Oregon's that close to flipping him. I just think that they're chipping away at whatever lead you want to call it that Texas A&M has. So, and that to me is just one of those guys that absolutely screams, Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning not letting this guy get away easily. We've seen him do that with a handful of guys in the past every year. And Noah McHale screams that. Seems like a guy they've been on early. They invested a ton of recruiting assets into, if you will, and spent a lot of time recruiting him. I know that when he was up on campus, Lanning was driving him around personally. So it's safe to say I think you'll see Noah McHale on Oregon's campus at some point, whether it's the Ohio State game or a different game, whatever. And I think Oregon's looking to strike there. So far, the Mike Elko era has not been off to the best starts at Texas A&M. Doesn't mean he's going to be fired. Nothing like that. We're not saying that. But it just hasn't maybe been quite the reassurance that somebody might be hoping for looking at him taking over. So, again, but I'm with you. That's a guy I would very much put on the list as definitely a candidate because of those reasons.
And the Noah McHale recruitment was an interesting one. I've interviewed him a bunch of times and gotten some decent sources around that recruitment. So I was pretty, fired up and I guess bullish might be the right word when I put that RPM in for Oregon. I think it was back in May. No one else had put a pick in. And then, the commitment date got closer and some A&M picks were coming in. And I was like, dang, is that really what's going to happen? And then he ultimately ended up picking the Aggies. But I think something important to consider here with Noah McHale's recruitment, even if you read what he had to say over at ScoopDuck, which was very complimentary of the Aggies, love the atmosphere, and just kind of the plan that they have for him, his relationships with guys like Elko and Bateman. He was talking about, I asked him, why'd you choose the Aggies? And he said, well, yeah, defensive-minded head coach and Elko. And then he made sure to say, well, it's kind of same thing in Eugene. You have that with Dan Lanning. But I think you just have two totally different products. You have someone who is established and kind of a well-oiled machine in Eugene with Dan Lanning and the Ducks versus a program that's trying to turn things around a little bit. I view A&M as a program that's always had the resources, always had the brand, all of that, always had the dudes, but they just every season I feel like I'm watching them and I'm like, like that's what you have. I don't know. I'm not just saying that because Oregon has a lot of battles with Texas A&M. I just truly believe that they have been incredibly underwhelming with when you compare it to what they have at their disposal. So Oregon had Dan Lanning and Brian Michalowski out at his game at Bonita last week, and McHale said that meant something to him. And he did kind of say that he chose the Ducks chose the Aggies over the Ducks, even though he had USC there in one of his final spots, but I never thought he was going to USC. The real ones knew that there wasn't really much of a chance there. But I think that Oregon is going to stay involved here until the very end. And that's a guy, like to your point, Justin, they really, really invested in him. And I was pretty shocked when he chose the Aggies, but I don't know. After talking to him for the first time in a couple months, and then after he had the Oregon coaches out at his game, I'm feeling better about that Oregon pick, even though I put it all in there all the way back in May.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Lanning's not going to spend a very valuable night on a bye week to go down for somebody he doesn't have a shot with. He's not going to do it. I mean, so I think it speaks a lot to knowing that Dan Lanning did go down and see him, like I said, on an important bye week. And I think it's fair to say that's one of the top guys on the board as far as flip candidates go that I think Oregon's really investing a lot of resources into. So I don't feel a flip is imminent, but I could totally see it happening. And I think that one still has a lot of potential to heat up.
So we talked about the Doug Utu commitment and where things are at with the offensive line, a little bit about Noah McHale here. Anything else that you wanted to kind of bring to the discussion before we wrap up today's show?
No. I mean, it's great to have a show where we're talking about a commitment. It's been a while. And again, I know that we're wrapping up, but if you're still, tuned in on this, please just go check us out at ScoopDuck and subscribe. Not even here on the YouTube page. Go to ScoopDuck, $5-10 a month, whatever it is. It's not a lot. And that's what allows Max and I to keep doing this more than your subscriptions to YouTube. So give us a shot over there. Tons of coverage, and we are on all this stuff even more than you know from watching these.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Oregon gets some much needed recruiting momentum with the addition of Doug Utu from Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman High School. If you want to find more of that guy, Justin Hopkins, you can follow him on Twitter/X at JHopkinsSD. You can find me on any social media platform at mtorresports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck YouTube channel and come see us at scoopduck.com. And then last favor to ask if you guys share the show, share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, thank you for giving us some of your time, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.